Shavua Tov. We're going to start perek Zayin and maybe Chet, but let's do a small recap of last week. Last week, we really saw, we envisioned, maybe better to say, what Beit HaMikdash looked like. And as I mentioned, it's very difficult to understand from the Ketuvim themselves, from Melachim specifically, what Beit HaMikdash looked like, because we have Divrei Yamim, we have Yechezkel, we have other references to look at, but the main reason is because we don't have any evidence. Binyan Hodus was really on top of it, and everything that was beneath was demolished because of what Hodus did. He kind of filled everything up with rocks and stones in order to elevate Har HaBayit. So we don't really have evidence, but I hope for everyone here, it was very interesting to see what I think it looked like, what most people, in academia think it looks like, including our Parshanim. So today we're going to actually look at the next step of Shlomo HaMelech's architecture, building other batim, his home, his own personal home, Beit Yar Levanon, Ha'amudim, etc. Before I go into that, I do want to say something I feel is important. In perek Vav that we read, we saw last week in Pasuk Yud Aleph, when Shlomo is in the midst of really building Beit HaMikdash. If you go back to Pasuk Yud Aleph, I want to read it with you, perek Vav, Pasuk Yud Aleph. It says the following. Vayhi dvar, I have by heart. Pasuk Aleph. Yud Aleph. Vayhi dvar Adonai el Shlomo lemor, habayit hazeh asher ata boneh, אם תלך בחוקותיי ואת משפטיי תעשה ושמרת את כל מצוותיי ללכת בהם, etc. etc. והקימותי את דברי איתך, אשר דיברתי אל דוד אביך, ושכנתי בתוך בני ישראל, ולא אעזוב את עמי ישראל. What I want to make a note is that with everything that's going on, this beautiful Beit HaMikdash that Shlomo HaMelech is building, going out to Tzor, to Hiram, in order to really get the best materials, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't seem to care very much about this binyan that he's building. He just says, Habayit hazeh, that house that you're building, im telech bechukotai. It's meaningless if you don't follow my chukot, my chukim. So why do I want to emphasize this? Because it seems like the Navi is telling us a little bit of a nevuah here. It's nice that you're building a bait, and as we saw, it's a beautiful bait, Beit HaMikdash. But Hashem is saying that's not what's important. What's more important is that you follow my chukim and mishpatim. That's the siftach. That's the beginning of everything in perek Vav. Maybe hinting that there's something that Shlomo can go right or left. So I wanted to emphasize another pasuk. If you have a Tanakh in front of you, if you go to Sefer Shmuel Bet, okay, Sefer Shmuel Bet, perek Zayin, pasuk Hey. So when David HaMelech wants to build a Beit Mikdash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers the following. He says, Lo yashavti bevait lemiyom ha'aloti et bnei Yisrael mitzrayim ve'ad. He says, look, I don't need a house. I really don't. I didn't live in a house. I don't need one. Once the Mishkan was taken apart in the Midbar, I don't need a Mishkan. I don't need a place. Right? B'chol asher italachti, he says, if you're following there in Shmuel Bet, again, perek Zayin, pasuk Hey Vav, says, B'chol asher italachti, b'chol bnei Yisrael, hadavar דיברתי את אחד שבטי ישראל אשר ציוויתי לראות את עמי. And then he says, למה לא בניתם לי בית ארזים? Did I ask you to לבנות לי a בית ארזים? I never asked you, and I don't want that either. Maybe that also gives us an understanding of why when David wanted to build it, Hashem says, I don't need one. So it's interesting how there's so much emphasis in Sefer Melachim in the era of Shlomo HaMelech on building Beit HaMikdash when Lichora Unlike with David HaMelech, when Hashem tells David not to build it, Hashem doesn't tell Shlomo to build it or not to build it. So we'll see in a minute what are the mini'im, the reasons why Shlomo HaMelech is building it. Is he building it because he really wants to build a great place for Hashem? Or is he doing it for himself, meaning to glorify his own kingdom, to glorify his own kingship, to glorify who he is as a king? That's a powerful, every other king on the planet, in all the nations around, well, next to their house, their armon, they had the pulchan, the place of worship. So this is going to follow what we mentioned before, two Shlomos. The Shlomo, the dedicated Shlomo, the one who's building a bait la Hashem, mamash, and the other Shlomo, we'll see in a minute, who's building a house, maybe not for Hashem, maybe for himself. Okay? So זה חשוב לי to להדגיש. And why am I saying that? Because from the get-go, when we start perek zayin, there's something very, very that stands out. Okay? So please open up perek zayin, pasuk aleph. perek zayin, pasuk aleph, ve'et beito. This is after we built the Beit HaMikdash. Ve'et beito bana Shlomo 13 shana vayichal et kol beito. We touched upon this last week when we said, I don't understand. He builds the Beit HaMikdash, if you remember, 7 years. We said 7 was an important number, whereas his own home and all the homes that he feels are as important to him, he builds in 13 shana. So right now I'm hoping to invest some time in that. Right? Because what's really happening here? How big is the Beit HaMikdash versus his own home? So in the previous perek, when we were going through the beautiful Beit HaMikdash, Mitzupeh Zahav, we went through the Ulam, we went through the Hichal, the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Dvir, as we mentioned before. We looked at all the different kelim. How big was Beit Hashem? So if you go back to perek Vav, pasuk Bet, it says there, "Ba'bayit asher bana Shlomo, Hamelech Shlomo, laHashem, 60 ama orko, ve-20 rochbo, u-30 ama komato." Basically, what is 60 ama? Ama kadosha, and ama is around 48 centimeters. Give or take 45 centimeters, depends if you follow the Chazon Ish or Rav Chaim Naeh. Which means really, if you think about it, Beit Hashem is less than 30 meters long. Okay? Less than 30 meters long. It's not very big. Less than 30 meters long. In our perek, once we start pasuk bet, let's read pasuk bet now, perek zayin, pasuk bet. From the get-go, he starts building these massive buildings for himself. Pasuk bet, vayiven et beit yar halevanon. Okay, Beit Yar HaLevanon, 100 ama אורכו, ו50 ama רוחבו, ו30 ama קומתו, על 4 טורי עמודי ארזים וקרתות ארזים על העמודים. It's much, much bigger. It's more than double the size of Beit Hashem. Now I can understand why Beit Hashem took 7 years, whereas his own homes, which we'll see in a minute what he built, takes 13 years. And the question is, if Beit HaMikdash was more important, he should invest more time. Or l'chilufim, less time in his own home. We'll see the Parshanim in a minute, what they say about that. But either way, to the Mikdash, we know this from different Ketuvim all over the place, from the Kemshech, the continuation of Melachim, to the Beit HaMikdash, many people come. They do Aliyah le'Har Habayit, and we see that there's not a lot of room in the Mitcham, in the area of Beit HaMikdash. But there's a lot of room in Beit Shlomo. So it shouldn't have been the exact opposite. You build a much larger area for Beit Hashem so that everyone could come for Avodat Hashem. And his own home, his own quarters where he lives should be smaller, but he does the exact opposite. So we have to address that issue, that problem. Okay? I want to show you for a second a picture Okay. So if you look here, what I did is it's not my diagram. I got a diagram off the internet. So you can see the differences, the yachas between the Beit HaMikdash over here, and these are his binyanim. Now, looking from afar, you can see, wow, he's really investing in his own home much more than the Beit HaMikdash. I mean, the area is almost double as far as the shetach, the area itself, and also the mivneh is also more than double, if not triple. And over here, the house of forest, Ya'ar HaLevanon, that we just read in Pasuk Bet, is really a place for him, a leisure, to go out into the forest and just enjoy himself, you know, to get some peace and quiet. It's a known thing that kings, when they're pondering, they go out to the forest because it's quiet. So he built himself a forest so that he can walk through it just for this peace of mind. Whereas Beit Hashem, we see, is much smaller. Couldn't he have built it, you know, Beit Hashem and this whole area here, and much more modest area for himself? So we have to להתעמק בזה קצת. What I did here, as you can see here, I took a diagram and I cut it. You'll see in a minute. This is Ir David. What you see in front of you is Ir David David HaMelech built. Okay, you can see Nachal Kidron. Okay, down here is Nachal Kidron. Ma'ayan Gichon is in the middle over here for water. This is the Chomot David that he built over here. And this is basically Armon David, which is Ir David today, more or less. And in Haro Moriah, which is empty over here, he didn't build anything because he wasn't allowed to, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm not interested in you building it now. So what I did is watch the next picture. I'm going to click over here. So that's really what Shlomo HaMelech built. First of all, he doubled the area of Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, right? So if I go back, this is the Yerushalayim of David HaMelech, and this is Yerushalayim of Shlomo HaMelech. And up here, as you can see, is basically Beit HaMikdash is over here. I'm going to blow it up a little bit so you can see. So this is the area of the diagram that I saw before, which is, here, I'll get a laser so it's easier to see. Right, so it's this area over here. This is basically Mitcham Har HaBayit, right? This is later on becomes Ir HaElyon, and Ir HaTachton is down here and much bigger. But this is the Beit HaMikdash, and this is his Beit HaMelech over here. This is the Amudim, and later on over here he builds another area for Bat Paro, which we will get to. But we really can see the difference between what he invests 7 years for the area over here versus this huge area over here, and it's darsheni, and we need to really figure out really what's going on here. And I went online and I found, very difficult to find, by the way, online, any picture that resembles anything, you know, similar to what we learned. But I cut this also. This is not really what it appeared like. I cut it and pasted different things, but it kind of looks like this whole area is massive. There's another one over here, which is for Bat Paro. It's massive versus a very small area of Beit Hashem. And one would think that, you know, the whole idea of building Beit HaMikdash is so important. Why does he only spend 7 years and he doesn't invest a lot of materials and he doubles it over here? So,
Rabbi Ote, just sorry to interrupt. It's so much like the Haftarah this past Shabbos about expanding Yerushalayim, and they have to be bigger for all the children to come, flocks of children that will come there, even though, right, it was sadness before, you know.
Nachon. So the truth is, yeah. So, but following what you're saying, then I would make this much even bigger, so that the worship, the Avodat Hashem, would be bigger and more room. But he doesn't. So what I want to do is I wanted to bring a Psikta Rabati, a Midrash, that really asks the same question that I'm asking, because it's very clear that there's a problem here. So this is what the Midrash says. It's from Psikta Rabati. It goes like this. Ata motze, you find, שכשבנה ביתו, הוא בונה אותו ל-13 שנה. שלמה built it for 13 years, וכשבנה בית המקדש, הוא בונה אותו ל-7 שנים. ויהי מקץ 20 שנה. We mentioned that out of the 40 years that he was king, 20 of them was dedicated to building. Although there is a parshan that tries to say that he built it simultaneously. So it's really, the whole thing was done in 13 years, but he finished Beit HaMikdash in 7, but most poskim say he first dedicated the first 7 years to the Beit HaMikdash, and then later on another 13 years for his own house, his own home. So the Midrash continues, מי ששומע שבנה ביתו ל-13 שנה. Those who hear that he built his own home for 13 years, וביתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא ל-7 שנים, and only 7 years for the בניין בית המקדש, סבור שמא ביתו גדול היה משל הקדוש ברוך הוא, assumes that his own home is so much more important and bigger. But the Midrash says, I put the punctuation here, the punctuation is mine. Love, no, מה פתאום? אלא שנתעצל בביתו. ובביתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא לא נתעצל. The Midrash says, no, the reason why it took him 13 years to finish his own home because he was lazy. So he didn't care so much about his own home, so it took him much longer, right? Whereas Beit HaMikdash, he put all of his energy in it, every second of the day, and he had so many people building it, and that's why he finished it 7 years. So it's eichut versus kamut, and it's being lazy versus being extremely careful and quick and efficient to build Beit HaMikdash. That's what the Midrash says, and that makes a lot of sense. So this Shlomo that we're talking about, obviously, is Shlomo Shaliach Hashem, who his main job is to build Beit HaMikdash. His main job is to make it a makom mishkeno shel Hashem, the Shechina and the Avodat Hashem, whereas his own home, he cares less about. So it was drawn out. And that's why the Midrash says that it took him 13 years. Velo od, and even more so the Midrash, a beautiful a portion that really shows some type of a gadlut with Shlomo HaMelech. Velo od, I'm reading over here, ela sheikdim kvodo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu lichvodo. By building first Beit HaMikdash and then his own home, he's putting Hashem first. Now, of course he would, right? But the Midrash is going to compare him to his father now. Lechach Natan omer le'aviv, when Natan, Hanavi, was telling David HaMelech, Ha'ata tivnei habayit, you want to build me a home? And then later on in Divrei Yamim it says, Lo ata tivnei, you will not build a home for me. Why? I put in the words why, madua. So the Midrash answers, Amar lo, this is the reason. Ata hikdamta kvodcha lekvodi. David, you put your kavod before Hashem. Misheraita, when you saw atzmecha yoshev bebeit arazim, tavata binyan beit hamikdash, when you were sitting comfortably in your palace in Yerushalayim, then you noticed, I'm missing Beit Hashem. ויאמר דוד לנתן, הנה אנוכי יושב בבית ארזים, וארון אלוקים יושב בתוך העירייה. So, therefore, David put himself before Hashem. אבל Shlomo says, the Midrash, מקדים כבודי לכבודו. And then afterwards, ואומר לאחר כך, את ביתו בנה שלמה. ולפי שנזדרז במלאכת המקדש, זכה להתייחד עם המלכים הצדיקים. So the Midrash basically is saying that Shlomo is better than his father because he first puts Hashem first, unlike David that first built his own home and then wanted to build Beit HaMikdash, right? And also the first teirutz over here is, of course, he just invested all of his energies to finish it quickly. When you love something, when you're doing something properly, you're quick. Whereas his own home, he cared less about, and therefore it takes him much longer. So we see here, this is talking about Shlomo HaMelech, Shu Shaliach Shel Hashem, right? I wouldn't bring two parshanim. I try usually to stick to the pshat, but here I dafka wanted to bring parshanim. So Rashi really quotes the Midrash, because everybody sees it. 13 years building his own home. So what does Rashi say? Veit beito bana Shlomo 13 shana, shebemelechet gavoa, meaning an important melacha like building Beit HaMikdash, nizdarez, he was quick to finish it properly and efficiently. Ubeshelo, but in his own home, nit'atzel, he was lazy. Ubeshivcho siper hakatuv. So basically, Rashi is saying, afuch al afuch. The fact that it says 13 years is not is l'shevach Shlomo, that he put all of his energies in building Beit HaMikdash. Mitzudat David says something very similar. but a little bit further. He says, Limed bekan shenit'atzel bevinyan beito, that we mentioned, like the Midrash says, Velo kulho ad 13 shana, did not finish until 13 years. Aval bevinyan beit hamikdash nizdarez, vekalehu le7 shanim. But then here I have the problem. He says, Af ki hayta gadol lehafli yoter mi beito. You know, if the Mitzudat David would have stopped over here, put a period over here, I would say perfect. But he adds this area over here, this one mishpat. Af ki hayta gadol lehafli yoter mi beito, saying that the Beit HaMikdash was bigger than his own bite. But that's not true from the pshat. Now, it could be that he's talking about the beauty, gadol, from the sense of beauty and mitzupeh zahav. But when we go through the perek of perek zayin and chet, though the text is minimalist and as far as portraying and the depiction of Beit Shlomo versus how much ink is spent on Beit HaMikdash, we see even from the first pasuk bet that we read, Shlomo's houses and homes were much, much bigger and seems to be more mefo'ar than Beit Hashem. So this here ruins it for me, because basically what that is saying is the exact opposite. It's trying to force a perush. It's trying to say, look, I know the psukim portray Shlomo as investing more in his own home, but we're trying to lelemed alav zchut. So we're going to try to go overboard and try to show that Shlomo dafka built Beit HaMikdash first and is megia lo much more. But the psukim, the pshat, is that he spends more money and more time on his own home. So we see again two Shlomos here. We see Shlomo, according to the Midrash and according to the Parshanim, that portray him as a wonderful memaher la mitzvah of bniyat Beit Hashem. But the psukim, the pshat of the psukim, without the Midrash and without the Parshanim, paint a different picture. And that is hafuch. He spends more time on building his own home. Now, this can go with what I started with. When I mentioned in the beginning, when I quoted the pasuk from Shmuel Bet, Hashem doesn't even want, he doesn't say that he wants a home. He never says he wants a home. When David HaMelech offers it, Hashem says, no, your son could if he wants to. But he never tells Shlomo to build it. He wants to build it by himself, Shlomo. So, as the Shaliach Hashem, he builds it properly. But as a melech, we'll see later, deteriorates, he builds it for his own amusement. So we see really the midot are very, very different. Which means the Mitzudat David adding on this one area over here has an agenda to try to paint Shlomo as the Shlomo Shaliach Hashem, which is good. But there's also another type of Shlomo. This teaches us something about Shlomo or what it could possibly be. So let's go a little bit into the psukim, okay? I'm going to go through it very quickly. Pasuk Zayin, Pasuk Bet, as we read, okay? ויבן את בית יער הלבנון 100 אמה אורכו ו50 אמה רוחבו ו30 אמה קומתו על 4 טורי עמודי ארזים וכרותות ארזים על העמודים. Now, I have a lot less ability to show you what it looked like because nobody has any clue what it looks like. So all of the pictures that we see that I showed you before is just an idea of what it possibly could look like, but we really have no clue. וספון בארז ממעל על הצלעות אשר לעמודים 15 טור ושקופים ו3 טורים ומחזה על מחזה 3 פעמים. So if I go back just to over here, basically it's telling you about this area over here, okay? And then later on it will show you the 18 that he brought from the Arazim, investing בכל הפתחים והמזוזות ריבועים שקוף. All these are the פתחים. There's lots of different ptachim here. Pasuk Vav, ואת אולם העמודים עשה 50 אמה אורכו. That's huge. 50 אמה אורכו ו30 אמה רוחבו, ואולם על פניהם והעמודים, ואב על פניהם, ואולם הכיסא. That's where the throne is over here, where people came to a Beit Mishpat. This is the court over here. This is his own kiseh. He sat there, and I'll show you later on, if we have time, a beautiful, beautiful midrash, gorgeous midrash that Chaim Nachman Bialik later on has a really fun time with about this kiseh. that he builds, the Kisei Hashem, this Kisei HaMelech, this beautiful throne that he built that has lions on it, and every time he sat down, the lions get up and they roar. Pasuk Tet, if you skip a little bit, Kol Eile Avanim Yekarot Kemidot Gazit Megorarot Mimgera Mibayit Mechutz. He uses beautiful stones all over the place. Umimasad Ad HaTefachot Umichutz Ad HaChatzer HaGedola, constantly all over the place. Really, if we surround all the areas, Umyusad Avanim Yekarot, again Avanim Yekarot, and then in Pasuk Yud Bet and Yud Aleph, Milamala Avanim Yekarot, again B'Chatzer HaGedola V'Lechatzer HaPnimit Le'ulam HaBayit. That's it. That's basically what we have to explain what we're talking here, and it's very, 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 very difficult. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I really want to go on with Sefer Melachim. It's a big, very large book, and I feel like we've been spending a lot of time here. But either way, what I wanted to show is that there's this tension between the building that he built over here and the rest of these big buildings over here. This is the Beit HaAmudim, Arzei HaLevonon, all the beautiful trees that he built. So we really see this metichut between the two. But what I want to show you also something very, very interesting that shows really the geonut of Shlomo HaMelech. He says, if you remember last week we learned about this Yam HaMutzak. I think Ron had asked me what it was used for, and it was used really as water to be able to cleanse the Kohanim and the Leviim so they can be Tehorim. And they filled up all these mechonot, as we mentioned before. There were 10 of them, both sides, in order to make sure that there's always water, mayim chayim, for them to wash with and to do tefillah with. But what's interesting to me, and I found, and I thought this would be interesting to you as well, is math. Just the math. I hope people here can follow. I had to spend a lot of time on this, but Vayas et hayam mutzak 10 ba'ama misfato ad sfato agol saviv v'chamesh ba'ama komato v'kav u'shloshim ba'ama yasov oto saviv. So let's see what we have here. 10 ba'ama misfato ad sfato, and the other one is v'kav shloshim ba'ama yasov oto saviv. So basically, we have the diameter, which is 10 amot, and the circumference, which is 30 amot. Nachon? That's what he's saying, right? 10 ba'ama misfato ad sfato, from one safa to the other safa, which is the diameter, which is 10 amma, and shloshim ba'ama yasov, and the circumference is 30. Now,
but it should come out to pi.
Exactly.
And all the Mefarshim talk about it.
Right. So I have here the circumference, and we know how do we get, what the relationship between the circumference and the diameter basically is 3.141, and there's some geniuses out there that can really say all the numbers by heart, back and forth, etc. But if we do math, this 30 and this 10 doesn't work out. So it's a problem. And there's some who try to say, you see, this is all written. It's not true in the fact that there's even a math given here, and the actual diameter and the Zabaya. So I found a couple of parshanim, and I saw that Ralbag basically incorporated two of the most prominent, the most important tshuvot. And the third tshuva is the Gra, which is just plain beautiful. So here's the first tshuva of the Ralbag in order to solve the problem of pi. It doesn't work out, right? Because 10 to 30 is basically 3, not 3.14. So the Ralbag says, Vehinei amru, shekav shloshim ba'ama, the circumference of 30, yisov oto saviv hu al derech kiruv. Kiruv means it's around 30. It's not exactly 30, but the Torah, the Navi wanted us to have full misparim, full numbers. But the truth is, in Torah, we don't always have full numbers. We have mechza, like we have the aron, amavachetzi, etc. Could have said chetzi too, but it didn't. Could have said a reva, shlish. We have those numbers in the Torah too. So therefore, it must be that the Ketuvim wanted some rounded off numbers. That's the first tshuva of the Ralbag, and he brings it al derech other parshanim before him. The second one, he says like this: V'im amarnu שמידת הקו הסובב היא לקוחה בחלל הים, הנה יהיה יותר קרוב על האמת, אך יהיה בו קירוב מעט, כי עוביו היה טפח, ולזה יהיה קוטר חללו 10 אמות, פחות שלישית אמה, etc., etc. Basically he's saying, if you notice here, the gold up here is much, much thicker, and the circumference from one side to the other isn't really 10. The medida was that included the actual gold, right? From one to the other. If I take that off, I'll have a little bit less than 10, and then I get to pi. So Ralbag is saying that Shlomo HaMelech actually knew this, but the medida was on the area of the width of the actual lip of the Yamutsak, of this Ke'ara. Also, another possibility is, if you see here, why I like this very much, it goes outward a little bit, right? It's a very beautiful ornament. It goes out. So it could be that the measurement, right, was on the top part and not inside, which would be a little bit smaller. And if it was a little bit smaller, then we can get to pi. So there we have the Rabbah bringing two really, really creative answers to try to show the brilliance of Shlomo. But the Gra tops it all. The Gra says the most beautiful thing. This is just gorgeous, right? Now, if you notice, for those who actually mentioned, I left in this vekav that was meant is a kri uchtiv. So vekav is the way we act, what we say. It's our kri. Vekav with the hay. Vekav with the hay is what it actually says, uchtiv. So what the Gra says, he says like this. I'm going to take the kav with the hay, and I'm going to divide it with kav, the actual way we're supposed to pronounce it. What is the answer? So kav with the hay is 111. Kav is 106. If I take 111 and divide it by 106, what do I get? 1 point, you can do it yourselves, I did it a couple of times, 1.047168. That's what I get. If I take the kri uchtiv, okay, over here, and I divide one with the other. The Grak says, I found pi. If I take pi and I divide it by 3, okay, shalosh, we have tfachim there, what do I get? The yachas, the difference between the two. So if I take this, 1.047196, and I times it by 3, we're talking about the tfachim there, I actually get to a perfect pi, which is just beautiful how the Gra says that. So it's really amazing how Parshanim are really trying to show the brilliance and the genius of Shlomo HaMelech being able to really figure these things out. As be'emet kol hakavod to other Parshanim that try to do it, and we see something very, very beautiful about that. But let's go on. That's something very cute about what we said. But I would like to talk a little bit more about another aspect that we did not yet touch upon. I have only 5 more minutes. So what I want to say is, after we go through, and we can't go through all of it's just too dry, but I encourage everyone just to read through perek zayin, which we went through last week. It's a depiction of all of the kelim that we spoke about, the mizrakot, the mechonot, where the kearot, the kelim, the shulchan, the chemapanim, the menorot, the 10 of them that we mentioned that exists. So just go through. I'm not gonna read it. It's just too difficult. But I do want to read the last pasuk of perek zayin. The last pasuk of perek zayin. Let me just unshare. The last pasuk of perek zayin reads the following. After we went through the building of Beit HaMikdash, the building of his own home, Beit Shlomo, in perek zayin, and then we go through the Yar, and we go through the beautiful ornaments and the Merkava and everything. The last pasuk says, "Vatishlam kol hamelacha asher asa Hamelech Shlomo Beit Hashem, vayaveh Shlomo et kodshei David aviv et hakesef ve'et hazahav ve'et hakelim natan be'otzrot Beit Hashem." Now, most people read this and they just continue on. I can't do that. What is this pasuk really saying? It really, really bothers me. This pasuk is saying, all of the gold and silver that David HaMelech put away in order to build the Beit HaMikdash wasn't used by Shlomo HaMelech for Beit HaMikdash. Instead, he takes all of that gold and that silver and he puts it away. And my question is why didn't Shlomo HaMelech use all of that in order to build the Beit HaMikdash? And had he used it, he would have also been able to put a little bit of David HaMelech into the mix. But he doesn't. And I don't know why he does that.
But it says ba'otzarot, bib ba'otzarot.
Yeah, he puts it away.
Away?
He puts it away. Be'otzot, it's a machsan. He puts it in the machsan of gold. But why didn't he use it for the Beit HaMikdash? So, some of you might not agree with me, but yachol liyot, you gotta go into the mind of a king that's growing and wants lichvodo. It could be, and this is a totally, in my opinion, not based on anything real, but it could be saying, I don't need any help. I don't need my father bearing upon me from beyond. I don't need any of that. I am the king. I don't need help from anybody. I can do it all on my own. I can build it. I can get all the gold and the silver. And I'm just going to tuck away just to show I didn't even use yours. Look how powerful, look how great I am. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this forth is because from this point onward, we're going to start seeing Shlomo HaMelech deteriorate. We start seeing him going downhill. And this is the emphasis on the second part of Shlomo. Until now, the emphasis was Shlomo Shaliach Hashem, the brilliant Shlomo that built Beit HaMikdash. And if we follow the Midrash and we follow the Parshanim, he put all of his energies in building the Makom of Hashem, 20 years. And his own home, he didn't care so much about. But I can read the whole thing the exact opposite. I can say, from the get-go, when he started getting rid of all of his rivals, when he started killing people, when he got rid of all those that might threaten his own kingdom, when he doesn't really care so much about using the gold and silver that his father painstakingly was able to gather to build the Beit HaMikdash, he doesn't use it, he puts it away, and he spends time, according to the Pshat, again, building his own home. And then we see that he starts building a bite for Bat Paro, and then he starts taking more women, and then he starts taking Susim, and it gets worse. So that's the other Shlomo. So this tension that we're seeing between Shlomo HaShaliach and Shlomo HaMelech is what the Ketuvim want us to learn. The Navi wants us to be able to learn about these two different Shlomos. And why? Because every person in power has two options. Has the option of being a great king following Hashem, and that's why I started out the shiur with Hashem saying, it's nice that you're building me a home, but I want you to follow my chukim, my mishpatim. There's always a chashash that the physical part will take over the spiritual. But Hashem wants the spiritual to be more important. And we see this tension with Shlomo HaMelech, and only at the end of his life does he realize that even a great king with intellect and genius and tvuna, la'asot melacha, could fall and fail. Alachat kama v'chama, other leaders. So the Ketuvim, the Navi, wants us to read these two paths of Shlomo. Shlomo HaMelech HaNifla, the one that builds Beit HaMikdash, the one that creates a perfect nation that we only long to get back to, versus the Shlomo that lets the materialism take over, and it takes over his brain, does his heart, and his yetzer as well, which we'll see going forward. So that's really, I encourage everyone just to read the psukim through perek Vav, Zayin, and some of Chet. And Be'ezrat Hashem, Bli Neder, next week, we'll pick up and we'll really start talking about Chanukat Beit HaMikdash. What kind of party did he throw? And then, unfortunately, we'll start reading about Chataim, but we'll have to delve a little bit into Midrashim to help us elevate Shlomo back to the status that he deserves. Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Shavua
Thank you
Tov.
for the
Thank
drush
you.
show on the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Toda Rabba.
Thank you,
Rav
I have just for 1 minute, I'll just say the reason why I send the drashot is not just because I want everybody to hear my Dvar Torahs, no, but it's really because I feel that's one of the ways we can connect everyone who can't come to shul, and that's why I purposely put in the in the drashot. Please read during Yisudat Shabbat and Erev Shabbat, just to give you a sense of this is what everyone else is doing, and we're doing this together. We're still a kihila. It's so important that we stick together and stay together. Achdut is so important. And even though it's still difficult and people are talking again about closing things down, it's so important to feel together and try as much as we can to reach out to one another and do what we can to be one, to be a kihila, because we're such a great kihila. Tov, Shavua Tov.
You knitted it beautifully.
Toda Rabba.
Thank you.
Yeah, they were excellent. Shavua Tov.
Thank you. Toda Rabba.